Hello, everyone. Thanks for braving the storms. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Firstly, I want to thank you all for coming here, for being hopefully a willing audience, not a captive one. I want to thank both you, Ming, and Yasue for being in conversation. And I wanted to thank the team at Silverlens, specifically Katie, Isa, Danielle, and Megan, for all of your help in shepherding this together. So I think just as a starting point, I just want to ask both of you to briefly introduce your practices for those who might not have seen the show or for those who are a bit unfamiliar with your works. So maybe just a couple of minutes talking about the most recent projects you've been working on and also the works that are here in the room with us today. So
my name is Yasue Maetake. Thank you for having me for this conversation. So my sculpture are exhibited in this space. There are total 3. One is behind you, the life size, and then 2 on the pedestals. So from, let's say, smaller 10-inch to 10 feet tall, I work a variety of sizes throughout the multiple mixed materials. They could be found objects, and they could be manufactured, purchased items. So it's so rendered and uniformly treated as a raw material in my structure, so that sometimes people ask me that, how can I melt the wood into the metal, or how can I melt the seashells into the plastics, and then all this play of the mystery, it's sometimes showing on my sculptured surface. But other than that, I'm a big fan of the structural engineering thinking process, and then always dealing with the gravity in relation to the freestanding sculpture. So this is my practice.
I can
do you use here?
Hi everyone. As Isa said, I'm visiting from Berlin. I'm from Singapore originally. The practice really stems from an interest in cinema history, the world cinema history. And what I do in my practice is I try to reenact classic scenes from classic world cinema pieces where I either use myself or other bodies to try and recast some of the storytellings that have been given to the world, right, from different parts of the world. I'm interested in notions of national identity and how we perform our own identities and culture. And I do this through role-playing.
do you just want to talk a bit, give a sentence or two about the piece you have here?
Yes, so what I'm showing here in New York is the Broadway edition of a piece from 2019. It's called Bloody Mary's, Song of the South Seas. It's taking as its main reference the famous Rodgers and Hammerstein American musical South Pacific. In particular, a character from there called Bloody Mary, who delivers this song of seduction called Bali High, about a fantasy island, and she's trying to lure the young American Lieutenant Cable, to come to the fantasy island where she is trying to pimp her daughter to get married to him for a better life. I'll talk a bit more later.
Of course. And so now that we have a point of orientation, I felt it was really important, since this is the first time the two of them have been in the same room together, both through their artworks, but also in terms of each other. I'm really curious about the first impressions you have of each other's work. What was it like seeing it for the first time? Would you like to begin, Ming or Yasue?
Yeah, Ming.
Well, I connect to it in the sense of how it that you can't. It's like a frozen moment of history, of time, whether it's backwards, forwards. I'm currently doing a project that looks into Chinese futurism through the lens of Cantonese opera, opera from the south of China, that was responsible, I think, for bringing cinema to that part of the world. And because it was Hong Kong, and I've been spending a whole decade there doing research, the question on everybody's mind was about the future, what was going to happen, and of course now we've seen how things have progressed. So, you know, a lot of my brain is preoccupied with notions of what the future is, but also in my own practice how it goes in full circle back to how things used to be. And when I saw Yasue's work, I said, like, wow, this is kind of like an archaeology of the future, you know, through materials, through what I imagine as narratives of violence, of survival, of ritual. And I'm always a sucker for shiny objects, you know, they're like jewels.
Thank you. Fantastic description. I am a bit nervous. So I was interested in, you hinted the word cinema. Mm-hmm. So of course, when it comes to your practice that it's a moving image and then action involved, that it's more about the cinema. But in terms of our common ground, that I was thinking that, you know, maybe a sort of crafted theatricality in a positive sense, or more innovative sense, that, you know, you are acting some other character and then completely reincarnating into something else. But you are the consistent actor throughout the video, and at the same time trying to transform into other characters through the world and the cultural background. Sometimes I don't know the reference at all. Actually, I still don't know, honestly, but still there is a strong impulse and visual kind of a seduction that, you know, captivating my attention, that I am almost having a, you know, effect, under the effect of the hypnotizing. I don't know whether you are trying to make that sort of effect throughout the video, but, you know, it's not just a one-on-one stage. It's a multiple segments of a collage, but it's not tiring. But at the same time, you know, it's not boring at all, and it's just the overstimulation of effect is entire footage that I lost the track that where is the end and then beginning. So something like that.
Great.
Yes.
Very well put.
Well, it seems like both of you are big fans of one another's work already, and I think like it's really interesting how you're both talking about it from this place of kind of seduction or longing or desire, right? This kind of the affective kind of coordinates of not only entering the artwork or encountering the artwork, but also what it means to find yourself immersed in it, whether it's in terms of these kind of syncretic kind of composite sculptures or in terms of the ever-moving collage that continues to syncopate across kind of surface, across the moving image, etc. And so I guess something I really want to think about first is this notion of production in all of its kind of valences. So for you, Ming, it might feel most apt in terms of thinking about theater, right? The production of a scene or of a staging or of a character. And then for you, Yasue, it's thinking about industrial production. If you look closely at some of the at all of the sculptures, there are bits and pieces that you would recognize in parts of technology or something that kind of came from a factory, mixed with these biomorphic or organic forms. And so I want you both to elaborate on this sense of production and what it means to you, but also what it feels like to both of you.
Yeah, when I describe my work, it's a combination of archetypical, that classism in combination with the futurism under the industrial aesthetic. So if someone is asking me to complete in one sentence that exactly this is how I phrase, and however, none of those references are dominant that, this is my end goal, that the encounter of my sculpture should be just like sort of the moment of a puzzle that people are dealing with the unknowable. But all these references you are talking about, the bits of industrial element, should go after you go through the orientation travel through the details. So I think that it's an interesting element that you see sometimes found element, familiar element, but overall impression is still unknown. So those conflicts is something that I am intentionally playing. So industrial materials are generally, around my lifestyle. Brooklyn landscape is a monstrosity of all this discarded garbage and then junkyard and industrial scenery. It's very familiar to my life. And this is just naturally comes to me. I am not searching, so it's there. So it's given things, I am just embed. But I am not necessarily surrendering to this everyday life as a period goal. So I am stretching to another level of, again, like unknown encounter. So this might be the element of like people refer as a futuristic element. It's not about the illustration of sci-fi zone, but it's simply the unknowable, unknown encounter.
Let's see. I mean, I also, in a way, use found objects, but in the sense, I'm looking at popular culture, right? Things that you grew up watching, or that you kind of consume, or that your parents or grandparents were used to watch and kind of have embedded themselves in your consciousness. Growing up in Singapore, we did consume a lot of American pop culture. South Pacific is no exception. But what I do as an artist was to kind of maybe think about what can be productive in the sense of turning it around, reclaiming something. I mean, the South Pacific was a kind of a story about the tropical island, and Singapore is part of that. This is a story for us, and I think part of my work is to introduce a strategy of unlearning, of trying to wade through this illusions of stereotypes, of preconceptions of how other people are. And hence, I do it through an anti-production, let's put it that way, by looking at casting the wrong type, casting people who are the wrong gender, the wrong nationality, can't speak the language, looks the wrong, and etc. And also, instead of super high production, Hollywood style of production, I go for the no-fi way of working, which is doing things in my own studio with a green screen, something which, most young people today do on TikTok. You kind of make it in your own living room. This is the strategy of unmaking, of undoing.
I mean, it's so interesting that there is this kind of dual or shared impulse of not disavowal or disengaging or a kind of, what do you call it? A kind of extricating of meaning or the histories of meaning and the ways that they can be overdetermined. Here it's like it's a grapple with the unknowable frontier of what happens when a sculpture can't be fully described or encapsulated in terms of this recasting and this reclamatory enterprise, Ming. It's ensuring that the imagination or the imaginary in which the South Pacific or these types of characters exist isn't something that can be essentialized. It's something that has to be kind of disrupted and perhaps expanded upon in generative ways. And so I'm thinking about, another word that came to mind is this sense of inhabitation. Both of you, I think there's a question about time here that both of you foregrounded that I want to return to, but I'm also thinking about the ways both of you encounter space. So you mentioned this kind of lo-fi studio or this lo-fi production, and then you also mentioned in terms of the studio, in terms of your own studio, Yasue, but also Ming, I'm thinking about it in terms of the characters that you inhabit, right, and re-perform or reenact. Can you walk us through what it feels like to kind of enter that? Like, what are the possibilities, but also some of the limits of that?
I'll start.
Yeah.
Let's say I'll do a walkthrough of how this work came about. So it was made in 2019. It was for a show in Hong Kong at Parasite Art Space called An Opera for the Animals. And in the section that the work was made for, it was dealing with the transmission of cultures across oceans, especially through early forms of art, which is textiles, weavings, how expressions are done through creativity with found materials, straw, grass, textiles, and the connections, surprising connections across different geographies. Yep. And so I said to the curator, I said, I'll weave you, I'll make a weaving, I'll weave a video. I'll weave a video that takes as a reference, of course, South Pacific, that most of the Western world is familiar with. But I'll deconstruct it in a way where I will reclaim the figure of the matriarch, Bloody Mary, and try and also make it relevant for our present time. So what I didn't mention before was the reenactment. It wasn't just me. I also went to find lots of American high school productions of South Pacific. I went to search for all the young Bloody Marys that I could find on YouTube. And I made basically this matrix of girls, mostly girls, who were not cast as the all-American girl. They are the other, right? Either racially or by body or the body type to play this character. And so I made this woven matrix of videos of all the young Bloody Marys I could find to create a kind of horizon in which the island is not a fantasy island. It's an island that's just on the horizon of inclusivity, of a certain alterity that we can reclaim. And out of this exercise, I also discovered you talk about generative processes. So it's not merely a deconstruction. Out of this, I studied the kind of the behind the scenes, how the story was made, how the film was cast, etc. And I discovered the narratives of the two pioneering African American actresses who gave life to the character Bloody Mary. And the more I dug into it, the more kind of fascinating and more kind of uplifting, actually, that I felt. Juanita Hall and Muriel Smith are both featured in this installation in a more extended way than what I've done in previous presentations. They were pioneering black actresses. Between the two of them, the first African American actor to win a Tony Award, the first African American to go to Curtis Institute in Philadelphia. Muriel Smith went on to premiere the role of Carmen Jones. She was in the same class as Leonard Bernstein at the Curtis. Juanita Hall sang the blues in nightclubs in New York and had songs written for her by Langston Hughes. Unfortunately, of course, they all passed away in relative obscurity. And so out of this project, I also decided that we need to kind of like foreground some of these journeys. And hence, for New York, we have an extended kind of like tribute. The work performs a kind of tribute to those who have a kind of a broken ground ahead of us. Personally, I love the two of them too, because if you're a musical queen like I am, you know that Juanita Hall also played the Chinese mother in Flower Drum Song, and Muriel Smith played Lady Tiang, one of the queens in one of the wives of the king in The King and I. They were also passing as Asian. If you know my other work, I do deal a lot with this slipperiness of identity, of passing. And hence all of them came together in this work.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about the relationship to my studio environment in relation to the outcome of sculpture in a formal presentation. So no matter what the materials laying around in my studio, which is in the process of the constant decay and weathering, ultimately, I think my urge is trying to conceal them into the permanent. So this is kind of a drive coming from my desire, wanting to possess them, which I kind of related to the more bigger picture of theoretical arguments such as anthropocentrism. In the past, I used to talk that, maybe I was confused with my, background culture, which is often, meant to be anti-anthropocentrism because, coming from the animistic view of the world and etc. But I think very recently I realized that it's not. Actually, I am not anti, because this is a human nature that we want to possess and then conceal the momentum of some material and the substance surrounding our life. And I am one of those, product as a human being. And however, any material substance has a fate that we can't freeze them. Of course, I am fighting against the chemistry and the up-to-date contemporary technology through the research of chemical techniques, how to make them preservable. So it's almost like, in the territory of restoration. But no matter what, that it's impossible that, we can let them to be so permanent, perfection. So all these things was, in my thoughts every day. And then I came to some sort of a conclusion that, okay, so my impulse drive is trying to conceal something. However, accepting the reality of things' demise over the time. So how to incorporate those two contradictions and the two contrasts? It's the mutual, answer and the production. It's the type of the sculpture I am making. So the topic gets kind of bigger now, but it's a sort of a connection through everyday landscape of my sculpture, which is semi-junkyard. But my thought process are always thinking towards the vision of those bigger picture of cultural context that where I am at. So then trying to connect those two and then always seeking the answer, but not as a theory. It's more laboratory practice that I am emptying out my thoughts, just focusing on the material and their limitation and the possibility right in front of me throughout various techniques and the chemistry, what I can do. And then, boom, some result came as a sculpture. And then after that, my concept is a backward practice that I start to self-analyze that what I wanted to say, so that all my statement, what I'm talking now, is essentially afterwards thoughts, like self-analysis after my sculpture is done, so that laboratory, practice first, and the theory, writing the thesis later. So it's a very similar practice as academic people are doing. So. I don't know. Yeah, this is something that I came to my mind.
Well, it seems like both of you are scavenging in different ways, right? Like whether it's scavenging through the archives and bringing together the bits and the fragments into one kind of surface, or with you, Yasue, it's kind of scavenging these materials found or familiar, and then defamiliarizing them as if to kind of posit a question in the hopes of an answer. And so I think there are like three ways or kind of three modes of the surface, right, in terms of the mediated technological surface and the moving image, in terms of actual sculptural space, but also in terms of substance. That felt like an operative word here, Yasue, that feels really important. And I'm thinking about that in relation to the exhibition's title, right, this kind of play of different polarities and the ways that they both kind of help to structure certain things, whether it's our own conception or understanding, but the ways they also destabilize that. And so how is it that with those three terms, surface, space, and substance, how is it that you both kind of rely on that, right, as a kind of starting point, but also destabilize that or find the moments or the points of rupture?
Right. Yeah, those three keywords, substance, space, and surface. Yeah, these are very, in a way, familiar topic amongst the sculptor, understandably, because this is what we are literally dealing with. But when it comes to the context, to the type of the show like we are in right now, which is totally mixed media, and moving image, two-dimensional, let's say, and then three-dimensional. So it's all sort of dimensions are collided together. So then this question becomes something new compared to those usual sculptors, group of sculptors are chatting each other every day. So then, yeah, I can't necessarily answer through the theoretically, but through my just more familiar experience, like recent history of my life, that I kind of very appreciate finally that my background training 20 years ago almost, when I came to New York, that starting with the master's degree, like art study. At that time, interdisciplinary practice was very, kind of new that people are very wild to introduce. So, but it was very artificial way that students are orchestrated. You are painter, sculptor, video artist. We are all bound together. So then let's talk about the borderless practice. But yeah, we are able. So I was trained to talk about it. But it was still institutionally organized, orchestrated artificial environment. So after that, of course, some trend changes, some, type of the generation again changed over the 2 decades. I just feel that now it's more kind of peaceful for me that compartmentalized presentation, sculpture, group show, painting. So then I don't need to stress to think about those, collided force amongst the media. But then afterwards, those artificial training in the academia. So now I think this is the first experience for me that wildly addressing those conflict of multimedia, especially now, which is kind of a backwards, in terms of my knowledge, best knowledge, like 20 years ago, etc. But again, cycling back throughout, those other process. And then now I am here. But no longer orchestrated by those artificial institutionalized way. And then this is naturally assembled through the, brainchild by the gallery, artist practice, and then vibe of those, population in New York. And then this is just naturally happening. So this really excites me. So I don't know, those more metaphysical space-wise that I'm relating to my experience.
I guess from my perspective is from someone who works with moving image and with performance, right? With the key words. How to disrupt the surface. And in my practice, really like editing is a form of it, to kind of disrupt the linear flow of a single perspective linear story. Also the use of multiple screens or multiple perspectives, or if you're in an installation, you're forced to have to kind of negotiate around wall spaces, etc., where there are perhaps other narratives behind other narratives and kind of like networking of different possibilities of telling a story. And I guess for space, I would then introduce the notion of geographies, like where are we located, and where are we, who and where are we looking at, and for whom is the work made for, etc., etc. Let's just say we're in New York. I did tell the gallery that, oh, well, I'm going to make a Broadway edition of this, whatever that meant. And I came here just a few days ago, and I saw the Harlem Renaissance exhibition at the Met, which I connect to, like, great, And it so happened also to be Juneteenth, right? It's my first experience of Juneteenth, and I'm like, this is perhaps a kind of serendipitous. That my notion of what a Broadway edition was also really about retelling the stories of these two pioneering film workers from American film history, and so it wasn't an active kind of decision on my part. I'm just sharing kind of like what I connected to and what I chose to kind of look at when I came to New York. I went to Times Square because there was a kind of a presentation by black actors on Broadway in a free performance, and I decided, well, that's the event I'm going to go while I'm here. I guess it comes to a way of looking at the world, trying to kind of make sense of where I position myself and how that could be maybe relevant to others, to try and kind of decipher all the waves of information and misinformation that's kind of floating around. I think that's my task as an artist.
Well, for both of you, it's like incredibly proprioceptive, right? Proprioceptive and philosophical, these ways of making, albeit in different forms and toward different ends. And I think hearing you talk in this metaphysical language in Yasue, and hearing you talk about Broadway and these different scenes and spaces, Ming, really makes me think of this notion of scale, which is an important kind of device, but also concept in any kind of diasporic discourse, but also in terms of how we contend with both the local and the global, right? And so I'm wondering if, or how this applies or how this plays out in terms of both of your works. Like, what is scale an important kind of matter or kind of tenet for your practices? Is it something that comes after the fact? Is it something that you encounter not even in your own artworks, but just in your everyday lives?
This physical scales.
interpret it how you will, right? Like, for example, you talked about all of these kind of systems and structures, these nesting dolls, right? From moving to a specific material to then talking about these different types of institutions like Columbia, where you did your MFA, the art world, interdisciplinary art. There's a way where it's those thresholds from things that seem in the abstract or largely conceptual toward the ways it manifests itself materially, right? That scalar toggling. I was wondering if you could talk more about that, because I know you also work at different scales in terms of your sculptures too.
Right. Yeah, because I am a sculptor, that when the keywords size scale is thrown, that I tend to think about the literal physical size topic. And yeah, I used to make only 8 feet span life size, little larger than life size. But whatever the life reason that, family plan or whatever makes me think that, I have to deal with the, smaller size. It's kind of backwards. Most of sculptors, struggle with the opposite, scaling up. But for me, for some reason that 8 feet, 10 feet, various vector ranges are the most comfortable. I don't know why, but it's so. And then, maybe because I can, my body can directly wrestling with, appreciation of sense of the gravity, and then direct engineering. But when it comes to the smaller size, like technically those scale, let's say, or even smaller one, sometimes those burden of the gravity and then engineering thoughts can be waived just because of the size. Handling is totally different process. So in that case, it's becoming more the symbolism and then pictorial sense of the presence and then presentation. So in other words, I am stepping into the territory of sort of the painter's practice, dedication to the visual notion rather than the physical sense itself. So I think that was the reason that I have had a hard time. But once I started to work on this variety, truly variety of sizes up to now, right now, again, from 10 inch to 10 feet. But it doesn't mean that it's just a literal copy and paste or enlargement or shrinkage. This is very bad practice if we do as a sculptor, making some image and then just a matter of, bringing it to the factory and making the bigger version. It's not a good practice because every size had their own unique territory and then limitation boundary to maximize their size to be articulated in a certain expression. So the same density of detail cannot be loaded onto some other sizes. So we can't transfer so easily. Therefore, I have to deal with each one of the kind of solution by the scale. So sometimes a sculptor or even myself say that material can guide us and then bring to some certain visual consequence. But size, scale also do the same play. So size guides me the consequence. So it's a kind of opposite practice that it's not my, based on my will only. It's all cooperation, like collaboration between the size, nature of the material limitation, and my will, vision. It's all hybrid of this. So, yeah. So about the size topic.
Okay, I'm gonna be a bit naughty and pretend I misheard your question. Scale, I'm gonna take it from a musical perspective, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. And amplification, maybe sounds. And so starting from this piece, if you heard it, the song Bali High that most people know, it's delivered as a chorus of young American high school girls singing the song. Not it's slightly off key, everybody a bit out of sync and out of time. And for me, this gives it its beauty and its resonance. This kind of like a non-disciplinarity, like not obeying a given structure, let's say. In my recent practice, I've been doing a lot more work with sound. And so, to give you some examples, like if you want to talk about a scale, which is, as we all know, is kind of like a very kind of strict structure, a basic building block, right? And it could be minor, it could be major, etc. But I am the one who like to inhabit the in-between. The kind of in-between notes, the miss notes, the wrong accent, and how does that express in sound? So, for example, in my research into Cantonese opera and science fiction, what does that mean? What happens when you try to imagine a Cantonese opera of the future? I don't know. I'm still working on that, but I know that when I make this presentation, it wouldn't be pure. It wouldn't be a purist approach to what traditional Southern Chinese music should be. How does that evolve through the complexities of all the layers of history and influences that have come before and might come in the future? And then another piece that's I'm currently touring. It's a piano battle with two classical pianists, and they are performing Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin, 1924, kind of a musical monument of America. And that's set against the Yellow River Concerto, developed during the Cultural Revolution, and now it's also used as an anthem for China. Like Lang Lang would play it for the Beijing Olympics. And I just put the two pieces of music kind of like together, expecting chaos, expecting kind of like noise, right? But of course, there is an aesthetic for appreciating noise. And in the experiments, there were a lot of unexpected moments of synchronicity, unexpected harmonies, and even like a kind of beauty. But in order to appreciate that, you had to bring in the aesthetics of jazz, for example, and also perhaps aesthetics of music from Asia, the timbre, the kind of a different way of listening was in order to find the potential of this meeting. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is to really find not just a new way of seeing, but maybe a new way of listening that kind of enables a new world to be formed.
Yeah, like just keying into that different register completely changes matters of perception, matters of perspective, etc. I think it's a really profound proposition. I think we may be running out of time, so I think I just want to thank the both of you for all of your insights and your brilliant illuminations. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask us after this talk, but thank you again for listening and for tuning in. Thank you.